His fists clenched as the steel handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. Silence pooled around him, a heavy void filled with the onlookers' disbelief. The Black Marine sniper stood still, his eyes scanning the crowd's faces. Each gaze reflected a mix of anger and shock, coupled with a biting, silent question. How could this happen? He remained composed, a stark contrast to the chaotic injustice unfolding around him, as if he carried a power invisible to all but himself. Would you sit idly by in the face of such glaring injustice? The arrest seemed to hang in the air, a discordant note breaking the calm of a sunny afternoon in the bustling city center. Uniformed officers maintained a rigid posture, their faces a mask of authority, determined to avoid the searching eyes that questioned their every move. The man they cuffed wasn't just any detainee. He was Marcus Delmont, a skilled sniper who had served his country with distinction. The irony was striking and foul. How easily a hero could become a suspect, his history of valor overshadowed by the color of his skin. Marcus's military background offered him a resilience few possess. Years of training taught him to master the storm of emotions brewing inside. In combat, that's what kept him alive. Now, that same training was being tested amidst this urban battlefield. His silence spoke resignation and decision. He'd let the system break itself upon the rock of false evidence. The eyes of the bystanders were not blind to his dignified suffering. Instead, they seemed to grow volumes in their silent support, an unspoken alliance forming through mutual understanding and mutual outrage. Inside the police vehicle, Marcus could barely make out the murmurs from the street, but he didn't need to hear them. The deep wellspring of his intuition told him all he needed to know. The people saw him as more than a man in handcuffs. They saw the man he had proved himself to be, one who had risked it all to protect the freedoms now seemingly stripped away from him. Each side of the cruiser felt too confining compared to the open desert plains he was trained to operate in, yet he remained still, a testament to his inner fortitude. The officers who detained him ignored the palpable shift in atmosphere as they closed the door and made their way to the station. Neither spoke of the awkward silence that followed them. They didn't dare acknowledge the accusatory glares that followed them through windows and reflections. Marcus's calm unnerved them, something they hadn't anticipated. The media buzz had transformed him into an icon, a representation of countless others who had suffered silently. As they pulled into the fluorescent glare of the police station garage, one of the officers finally spoke. "You got anything to say for yourself, Delmont?" He sneered, doing his best to maintain an air of authority. His partner shifted uncomfortably, feeling the tension rise. "Justice," Marcus replied slowly, the word hanging, before adding, "waits. It never forgets." The officer's mask of control slipped for a brief moment, a window into the insecurity behind the uniform. Inside the holding cell, Marcus wasn't alone. The stark gray walls watched over many others facing unseen battles, their stories sealed behind iron bars. But unlike them, he had an ace up his sleeve. He knew that beyond these walls, preparations were already underway. Allies, in unexpected places, were marshaling forces that promised to bring a reckoning. A court date would be set, and with it, the truth would finally have its day. Injustice doesn't always announce itself with fury. Sometimes it reveals itself quietly, in the calm confidence of those who know they've wronged another. And as Marcus sat in that cell, the calm assurance spread through him like a warming glow. The fight wasn't over. The seeds of justice had been sown, and the harvest was inevitable. No one in that courtroom, least of all those who put him in this predicament, would anticipate the storm of light coming to expose the darkness. The courtroom was packed, a pressure cooker of emotions barely restrained by the solemnity of the proceedings. Silence hung like a delicate balance, ready to break with the slightest provocation. The walls held stories, whispers of justice sought, truths distorted, lives hanging in the balance. Those who had gathered were diverse, yet unified by the tension in the air. They watched, wide-eyed, waiting for the drama to unfold, for the reckoning that had brought them all here. In the gallery sat friends, family, and strangers, all feeling the undercurrent of injustice that had led to Marcus Delmont's arrest. Each face told a story of their own, a mother clutching her purse as if holding on to something precious, a young activist with a burning gaze, and an elderly man who had seen one too many injustices go unchallenged. Among them was a small group of veterans, wearing silent badges of service as they bore witness to their comrades' time of trial. At the front, the defense table was set with an able team championing Marcus's innocence. They sat with purpose, pens poised, expressions confident yet cautious. His lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Jessica Rivers, carried an air of steely determination. She knew the stakes were beyond the immediate, they were historical. This case was more than Marcus, it was about a systemic change, a question of race, equality, and dignity reserved for no man, yet deserved by all. In their presence, Marcus sat in quiet reflection. His posture was erect, but to anyone truly observing, his eyes revealed a man torn between worlds, the disciplined Marine sniper and the wronged civilian seeking justice. He was aware that this silence was both his armor and his ally. The gallery's watchful eyes seemed to give him strength, a reminder that he wasn't just fighting for himself, but for unvoiced struggles across time and distance. The prosecution's side was markedly different. They appeared confident, perhaps overly so. Legal arguments remained weapons in their hands, yet there was an underlying sense of routine, a mechanical adherence to process rather than pursuit of truth. Their lead prosecutor, Edward Harmon, towered over his team with an air of practiced authority. His eyes scanned the room confidently, ready to leverage the status quo to their advantage. Yet today was not to be another trial. Beneath the surface, currents shifted, and the stakes were higher than they anticipated. Eyes locked on the defense table and then back to Marcus, anticipating the moment that would reshape this narrative. Jessica looked towards her client, her gaze meeting Marcus's, a quiet understanding passing unspoken between them. She had a plan, a strategy woven carefully to unravel the prosecution's machinations, expose the gaps in their armor, and lay bare the truth that had been overshadowed by the shadows of prejudice and power dynamics. This was her battlefield, and her words were her most potent weapon. Outside, the anticipation was palpable. Journalists gathered with microphones and cameras, framing every moment for the masses outside who wondered what standpoint justice would decide to take. Those who walked by craned their necks, sensing something monumental yet unseen. The air was thick with an expectancy that buzzed through conversations at nearby cafes, on train rides home, and in quiet living rooms watching the evening news for the latest soundbite. The sense of a greater plot shifting just beneath the surface made the scene surreal, almost cinematic. Those present would not merely witness a court case, but a pivotal moment that questioned and challenged long-standing norms. Whatever the outcome, they felt change looming, and in their silence they held their breath, waiting, urging justice to be swift and unerring. Marcus's family sat steadfast in support, their silent prayers weaving through picture frames and memories of his past, steeling themselves for the oncoming confrontation. Each knew the value of their presence at this moment, how their silent resistance was a roar against injustice. They sat like sentinels, fiercely protective, unyielding in their faith that the world was watching, and somewhere in the multitude of narratives to be relayed, justice would find its voice. As the courtroom doors opened again, admitting the final few spectators, the recessed hush returned. What happened next lay cloaked in uncertainty, wrapped in the murmur of expectation. The opening gambit lay heavy in the air, where silence stood its ground against tumultuous change, silently demanding the intrusion of justice through these hallowed doors. The dialogue had only just begun, and everyone, knowingly or unknowingly, prepared for what was to come. All eyes were on Marcus as the proceedings began, but he seemed untouched by the attention. His stillness was almost meditative, a stark contrast to the whirlwind of anticipation that sparked in the air around him. Inside, however, Marcus's mind was active, cataloging every minor detail, observing the ebb and flow of tension around him. This was a different battlefield, yet his training in patience and precision carried through. Jessica Rivers opened with a measured calmness, her voice cutting through the courtroom in concise, deliberate notes. "We are not just fighting for Marcus Delmont," she said. "We are fighting for a justice that doesn't discriminate, for principles worn thin with negligence. Her words resonated, leaving a palpable charge in the shared air. Jessica turned briefly, meeting Marcus's steady gaze for confirmation that spoke without words. Their mutual confidence glistened, a shared understanding, an unyielding resolve. As the legal dance began, the court shifted its attention to Marcus directly. The prosecution sketched an image of events skewed towards presumption, a narrative engineered to fit their theories. They noted the situation that had led to Marcus's arrest, a misunderstanding they inflated to justify their actions. Yet in the telling of their story, cracks were evident even to a cursory observer. Marcus remained silent, as had been the plan from the beginning, relying on Jessica and his legal team to shape the truth. His stoicism became a symbol, a silent defiance against the narrative being forced upon him. Every moment he maintained his composure under the glare was a refusal to give in to systemic prejudice. Jessica responded methodically, dismantling the prosecution's arguments with a calm demeanor that belied the intensity of her words. "What is at stake here surpasses one man's life," she continued. "It's a question of honor, of integrity. The binding threads of freedom Marcus fought to protect, now tested within these walls." From the corner of his eye, Marcus detected a subtle shift in the crowd. A lean forward, a collective hold of breath. Every eye turned to him was both a scrutiny, a curious inquiry into the depth of his character, and a silent, hopeful nod for a beacon amidst growing shadows. During a brief recess, Marcus's thoughts flickered back to the endless nights spent in desert landscapes, the camaraderie he shared with his platoon, brothers and sisters in arms. The memories provided strength, a reminder of a world where actions spoke louder, stripped bare of superficial judgments and labels. It was this world he carried within him, the one he wanted to defend through this trial. A universe in which justice knew no color. As the courtroom reconvened, the evidence began to flow. Documents, photos, and testimony from those who had witnessed the arrest painted a different picture than that of the prosecution. The testimonies presented wielded the power to shift narratives, revealing inconsistencies and highlighting the callous nature of the accusations. It was clear to many watching that the perceived inconsistencies in Marcus's case were built upon unstable ground. Through it all, Marcus sat as a fortress of calm, his presence speaking volumes without uttering a single word. His silence echoed beyond mere defiance. It was a powerful statement that refused to be overshadowed by prejudice. His gaze often swept the courtroom, a soldier evaluating the landscape, recognizing the allies in the observer's empathy, the foes in the prosecution's resolve. It was then that an elderly man took to the witness stand, his military insignia toned down by years but still commanding respect. A sense of reverence accompanied him as he spoke in a clear, unwavering voice about Marcus's exemplary character and contributions to the service. His words pierced the tension, reinforcing the truth of Marcus's resolve and integrity as a soldier. His testimony ended with a solemn gravitas that sent ripples through the room, a resonance that would linger in hearts and minds. In the silence that followed, Marcus exchanged a glance with his family, their silent encouragement reaching out across the room. His mother's eyes held a message stronger than any spoken word, a silent hymn of resilience and faith. As the day pressed on, each witness and piece of evidence woven together began to tell a different story. It painted Marcus not as an anomaly, but as a symbol of fidelity to truth, a reminder that silence could roar louder than the loudest voices. And as the courtroom day ended, everyone present understood this wasn't just a single battle. It was the beginning of a reckoning, a test of justice at its core. As the courtroom settled into the next morning, the murmurs of anticipation were tangible, a current that connected everyone within its walls. The focus was laser-sharp on Marcus, who sat serene and composed, a quiet force impossible to ignore. He bore more than a figure unjustly accused. He was a vessel of hidden strength, bearing the silent narrative of those rendered voiceless. Marcus's formidable presence was neither by accident nor mere chance. Beneath his calm exterior lay years of honed discipline and strategic acumen, traits nurtured over time. attributes that had seen him rise to a revered position within the military's elite. He had been trained to recognize threats, to respond effectively in environments steeped in uncertainty. Now he applied the same sharpened instincts to navigate this trial, carefully weighing each moment, each flicker of the prosecution's resolve. From the rows of spectators, you'd catch whispers about Marcus's military achievements, speculation tinged with admiration and awe. His status as a sniper was legendary, a sharpshooter with precision unparalleled, a protector willing to risk his life for comrades and country. That his life had come to this juncture only added a layer of surreal disbelief among those who knew even a fraction of his story. This was a man who in combat found clarity in chaos, whose decisions carried life or death implications. The courtroom was different, controlled, yet fraught with its own silent dangers. Marcus understood that power often lay not in overt demonstrations of force, but in subtle, quiet persuasion, letting truth do its work, dismantling false constructs without fanfare. The courtroom was a battlefield of words, and Marcus, always the strategist, knew when silence was his greatest weapon. Beneath the surface of the proceedings, an entirely different clock ticked. Unknown to many, allies across various fronts mobilized efforts on Marcus's behalf. Men and women of influence, people who understood both his military prowess and the value of justice undiluted by bias, worked tirelessly to peel back layers of misinformation. Their efforts emerged slowly, like sunlight piercing through a dense canopy. By late afternoon, these motions began to bear fruit. The defense had gathered unforeseen details about the officers involved in Marcus's arrest. Even the staunchest prosecutorial walls couldn't hide cracks revealed by thorough investigation. Evidence surfaced suggesting questionable motives and procedures used during the arrest. The shadows beneath opaque policies now caught in an unflattering light. It implicated an urgency not just about Marcus's case, but about a system stumbling under its own weight. The weight of silence became palpable whenever Marcus met the eyes of the prosecution. His composure, resolute and unyielding, seemed to crack open a vulnerability on their side. He held their gaze with the quiet determination of someone who knew more than they could comprehend, someone whose power lay quiet yet deep. Underneath their facade of confidence, there was a creeping recognition that this case was no longer just another line in their docket. It stood to challenge an entire infrastructure. His countenance was a paradox, a man embodying restraint, yet exuding boundless potential. It was the juxtaposition of a soldier poised to strike, not with aggression, but with the truth. Beneath every syllabi they attempted to hide behind, Marcus's silence resonated, an echo of battles fought and lessons learned on distant shores. As proceedings paused for the day, the exchanges lingered in Marcus's mind, each moment of strategy syncing with the instinctual rhythm he had lived by. He knew more than anyone that beneath the spectacle and veneer of legal formalities lay a truth waiting to be unchained. His silence was not passive. It was an active, potent message that spoke to a legacy far larger than one man. The echoes of his story were building momentum, setting the stage for the days to follow. With each passing moment, the courtroom audience grew more attuned to this current, a buzz of anticipation that rose in crescendo with each revelation. Marcus Delmont, the Black Marine sniper, stood not only as a defendant, he embodied the courage to transform narratives, to wrest victory in spaces where defeat was often preordained. His silence breathed life into standstill moments. His silence asked the world to reconsider, to see what lay beneath the surface of its own preconceived judgment. In the air thick with expectation, there remained the glimmer of hope, charged and ready to crack open the dawn of a new understanding. The courtroom buzzed with a new kind of electricity the next morning, charged with anticipation. People filled the seats with a readiness that acknowledged today would not be like the others. Jessica Rivers, meticulous as always, was rearranging documents and conferring with Marcus as they awaited the day's proceedings. The scene was poised at the brink of revelation, a carefully constructed drama teetering on its axis. The morning light filtered through high windows, casting a glow that seemed too calm for the storm soon to unfold. It cloaked the room in a deceptive tranquility, yet beneath, the day's agenda loomed large. It was time to pivot the performance, to transform whispers of injustice into a resonance that demanded the world's attention. The entire courtroom was a stage set for confrontation, yet it was also a mosaic of quiet revelations, each piece a testament to defiance. As Marcus sat at the defense table, many in the room couldn't help but study him, trying to decipher the enigma tucked neatly into a Marine uniform that bore no visible rank or medals today stripped bare, yet exuding a quiet authority. To them, he was no longer just a soldier standing trial. He was a symbol of much more. Today would see the defense's strategic presentation, a pivotal chance to shine light where shadows had been allowed to fester. Deeply entwined with prejudice and misunderstanding, Jessica felt the weight of this responsibility, carrying with her not just the hope of Marcus's acquittal, but the dreams pinned onto one trial woman, carrying the fates of so many before. With a nod from the judge, proceedings commenced. Jessica rose, her presence demanding attention without force. "Your Honor," she began, "we stand here not just to clear one man's name, but to untangle layers of assumptions laid against the fabric of justice." Her voice was steady, her expression calm, yet fierce. She moved through her arguments like a seasoned sailor across a storm-tossed sea, navigating the complexities deftly, unerringly. As the day unfolded, testimonies brought new currents of truth to the courtroom. Witnesses for the defense revealed inconsistencies in the police report. Eyewitness accounts conflicted with the prosecutorial narrative. Voices previously muted rang out with tales of a man who not only served with honor, but lived with unyielding integrity. The highlight came when a fellow Marine, a burly figure whose very posture demanded respect, was called to testify. His gruff voice conveyed authority, but more than that, his authenticity pierced the air. He regaled memories of Marcus on missions, his quiet leadership, unwavering courage under fire, his respect for life. It painted a picture strikingly at odds with the one being argued by the prosecution. Crucially, it was Marcus's own restraint, his silent dignity in the face of antagonism, that lent profundity to his colleague's tale. As his fellow Marine described him as a man who exemplified fairness and profoundly understood justice, the story took on a weight, wrapping around the crowd like a binding cord, a melody that insisted on its own truth. Meanwhile, Marcus observed intently, his calm demeanor absorbing every word, every shift in mood within the room. His gaze occasionally caught Jessica's, their silent communication threading through the chaos. It was a timeline of resilience, etched into the courtroom's records, determined to reshape the narrative into one where honesty basked in light, undeterred and unrepentant. All the while, the prosecution's table bore witness to the tide of perception turning against them. Their confidence, once solid, showed signs of faltering. Observing Marcus's ever-steady calm, they felt the shifting weight of a battle edging toward recalibration. Outside, beneath the courthouse steps, passers-by paused longer, feeling the muted roar of whatever was unfolding beyond their view. News updates began steering the narrative towards a new direction, a reinvention of a story many had thought closed before it began. Publicity shifted, aligned more with clarity than conjecture. Marcus's family watched on, every shared glance whispered reassurance, a braced farewell to doubt. They were testimonies to support and love, their presence a balm over nerves frayed by the strain of waiting. As the defense rested their case, a sense of realization swept through the room. The day had not merely been a stepping stone but a leap, and with it, Marcus's power, concealed to this point, began revealing its scope. His quiet composure influenced a broader movement in play. As the gavel brought the session to a close, echoes continued to dance around the courtroom, refusing to quieten. Those present knew they'd witnessed something grander than themselves, an event destined to ripple outward long after today. A collective feeling took root. The invisible wheels of justice, long idle, had indeed begun to turn again. As dawn broke over the city, it cast a golden hue upon the courthouse steps, ushering in a day potent with promise and determination. Inside, Jessica Rivers meticulously reviewed the strategy with her team. They labored with the weight of both evidence and expectation, stitching together a defense tapestry that was as much about exoneration as it was about illumination. Today, precision was paramount, strategy crucial, not just for Marcus, but for what his case symbolized. Marcus sat silently, a sentinel at the eye of a storm, his mind a disciplined instrument forged in the rigorous heat of military exigency. The courtroom felt less like a place of judgment and more like a coliseum, its walls resounding with whispered legends of past battles fought within its bounds. It seemed fitting, then, that Marcus, who had fought in harsher climes, stood cloaked amidst this arena of justice, ready once more. This arose, her posture resolute, a lighthouse guiding those lost in the fog of doubt. Her team, a cohesive unit mirror image to any squad Marcus had led, aligned their focus on this ultimate mission. Each brought a distinct voice, yet together they spoke one language: truth. There was no room for error in this skirmish. The stakes were far too high. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady, ringing with clarity, "today we present not just a defense but a narrative beyond police reports and misconstrued events. It's a tale of one man, no, of many, standing resilient amidst a cascade of unfair narratives." Her words were threaded with calm precision, yet they held an undercurrent of urgency. The room seemed to contract as the prosecution weighed this initiative with unease. As Jessica outlined their strategy, she honed in on every inconsistency with precision that left no stone unturned, no truth uncovered. Their tactics were sharp, targeted, with efficiency honed through countless nights of preparation. Every phase of their argumentation exposed procedural oversights and deliberate shadows within the prosecution's case. Carefully curated exhibits and newly surfaced testimonies pointed glaringly at a refusal to see Marcus as anything but his uniform's color. The courtroom was riveted, as Jessica connected each point with the proficiency of a craftsman laying a mosaic of unassailable truth. Marcus remained the court's quiet center, his silence more profound with each new witness called. Veterans, family members, even acquaintances from his past filled the room with anecdotes of a man whose life had marked others profoundly. The tales they recounted were not just those of courage under duress, but of subtle, everyday heroism. They stitched a tapestry that glinted with Marcus's humanity, a reflection not of persecution but perseverance. There was a moment when Jessica, orchestrating flawlessly, introduced new evidence, a video clip captured by a passerby on the day of Marcus's arrest. Brief though it was, its contents laid bare the true narrative. The footage, raw and unabashed, depicted Marcus's calm interactions juxtaposed with the overly assertive demeanor of his arresting officers. It was, undoubtedly, a revelation that brought palpable unease to the prosecutorial table. Gasps rustled through the courtroom like a breeze, a collective intake of breath signaling a shift. For a fleeting interval, silence enveloped the room, thicker now with possibility rather than uncertainty. Jessica's clinching of their strategy resonated with the finality that left little room for continued prejudice. In the wake of this, Marcus's gaze traversed the courtroom, capturing the swelling support and sudden re-evaluation in spectator eyes. His narrative, once mired in false portrayal, now shone, resplendent and renewed. As the session came to a close, the courtroom buzzed with murmurs turned echoes. Those assembled left, or rather migrated outdoors, sharing the day's revelations with fervor, each detail discussed, dissected, and disseminated through the public consciousness, amplifying its reach. Meanwhile, Marcus's family gathered around him, their eyes reflecting a shared hope. Their presence fortified him, a lifeline amidst turbulent seas. He nodded as if to share an unspoken promise. The justice saw it was not elusive, it was unfolding even now. The prosecution's once boisterous confidence found itself waning, overtaken by Jessica's innovative defense, which had broken their rhythm, thwarting their misguided narrative's momentum. They now faced the waning hours of their argumentation, cognizant that the truth soldiers marching in cadence, was closing ranks. As Marcus exited the courtroom, the crisp, cold air felt charged, potent with a renewal of purpose. He could feel the shift beyond his own story, vibrating through the city's streets to reverberate in hearts and minds. The day's contingencies had transformed, revealing the hidden power not just within Marcus, but within every voice undimmed by injustice. Hidden powers no longer dormant, now seen, now heard. Justice wasn't just a word anymore, it was in motion. The courtroom assembled with a tension so thick it could almost be held in one's hand. The prosecution, girding themselves with every document and precedent available, moved with the determination of those who felt the ground shifting beneath them. For Marcus Delmont, it was another day on the front lines of a battle for more than just his freedom. It was a confrontation between deeply ingrained bias and newly emerging truth. Edward Harmon, the lead prosecutor, stood ready. His stance was that of a man preparing to defend not just his case, but the order of things as they stood. Today would require deft maneuvering, a calculated strategy to regain footing lost in the courtroom's shifting tides. The chorus of chairs, scraping against the floor, signaled the beginning of another legal contest, a continuation of narratives intertwining with stakes that grew ever more palpable. Harmon opened with remarks intended to reassert his case's waning authority. His tone was combative, yet his eyes betrayed a hint of uncertainty. He picked through the evidence laid out before him like a general surveying a battlefield, eyes scouring for any weak link. "Ladies and gentlemen," he implored, "we are here to unravel the facts in pursuit of justice." He might as well have been speaking directly to the silent man-fed, flesh and bone at the defense table, whose mere presence seemed an affront to Harmon's structured world. Marcus, the embodiment of both the injustice being contested and the hope for rectification, sat profoundly still. In his silence was the reminder that within this trial lay the crux of his truth, a truth increasingly harder to deny. Harmon's arguments took form, crafted with the precision of many prior victories in the judicial arena. He attempted to coax his narrative back into relevance, to anchor perceptions that had dangerously drifted toward Marcus's favor. The courtroom's audience listened, interspersed with the subtle shift of weight between watching and actively considering the humanitarian stakes involved. As Harmon continued, the prosecution's apparent overconfidence began to tremble. It was soon evident that their amassed artillery of documents and data began yielding its constructed veneer, eroded by the poignant simplicity of revealed truths. Their strategy was analogous to a mighty fortress first appearing impregnable, only to wobble under internal discord and unanticipated vulnerabilities. Jessica Rivers and her team watched on, analyzing every word, every slight misstep, with the keen precision of hunters locked onto a patient prey. They measured the prosecution's intent, poised to exploit any sign of slackening resolve. Harmon's face carried the burden of understanding that fighting yesterday's war wouldn't win today's battle. He needed something more. Marcus's gaze remained unyielding, a well of composure within the courtroom maelstrom. Through the tightened field of contention, his inner dialogue was unwavering, a silent meditation not of surrender but of survival. His story hadn't changed, rather, the perception of it had fundamentally shifted, reflecting an emergent elasticity that adversaries struggled to control. It was then, as if on cue, that the unexpected happened. A shuffle at the back of the courtroom drew collective gasps that rippled through the staunch wooden pews. A presence both powerful and unexpected entered, altering the courtroom's chemical balance in an instant. Eyes turned as a figure cloaked in authority and unmistakable power stepped forward. The four-star general himself. He was a beacon of gravitas and respect, and his entrance was both a spectacle and an interjection of dramatic sincerity into the midst of judicial warfare. The revelation of this new entry was chilling in its simplicity. The room stilled, charged with a paradoxical mix of hesitation and an insatiable thirst for the revelation he promised. His uniform, decorated and pressed, spoke volumes of earned respect and venerable service. Marcus, who had remained a paragon of silent might, felt a rush of recognition, a reflection of his own buried experiences, a silhouette of integrity walking into this fragmented narrative. The general's presence was now the keystone to a strategy Harmon hadn't foreseen, a bearing pivot announcing its unexpected subversion. Harmon's arguments quivered with unpredictability, and one could sense a tremor of uncertainty. A trial was no longer a spiral of confusion within unseen margins of errors. The general's mere presence marked a line yet to be crossed, an error to exploit, a truth about to be charted from unguarded territories. The court session, enlivened by this unforeseen arrival and by Harmon's efforts to reclaim dominion, was a cauldron of redefined landscapes and veiled possibilities. As the echoes of hurried notes and whispered deliberations resounded through the room, a single reality crystallized. Today would reshape not only Marcus's fate, but perhaps the landscape of justice itself, proclaiming silently within these walls that such revelations couldn't remain mute forever. The courtroom's atmosphere shifted palpably as the four-star general moved with a purposeful grace through the sea of whispers and wide-eyed glances, his arrival an unexpected crescendo in the unfolding drama. The weight of authority he carried was not born solely from his rank, but from the life lived and battles faced, the intrinsic respect commanded by years of commendable service. As he took his place beside Jessica and her team, the tension climbed, transmuting expectation into an adrenaline-charged anticipation. Marcus met the general's eyes for the briefest of moments, an unspoken dialogue passing between two men whose lives had been defined by duty, sacrifice, and now, an unjust confrontation with systemic bias. The general cleared his voice, a signal that rippled through the crowd, each breath held tightly, as though exhaling too early might dissolve the moment's gravity. He was a figure steeped in influence, unshakable as he prepared to take center stage in a trial whose stakes extended beyond any one person's freedom. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steeped in solemnity and purpose. Every syllable resounded with the authority of someone accustomed to command, yet humble in the face of truth. "I speak not only for myself, but for an institution dedicated to the values of integrity and justice. I come to bear witness to the character and valor of Marcus Delmont, an exemplary Marine and a true embodiment of honor." His words cast ripples through the room, prompting a ripple of emotion among the spectators. A collective realization took root. This was not merely another rank-and-family rebuttal. It was a testimonial grounded in first-hand experience, demanding a reevaluation of previously taken as given. Jessica stood by, nodding subtly, her decision to involve the general a strategic masterstroke. She recognized that sometimes the weight of truth isn't enough. It must be delivered with undeniable authority. The general's presence was gradually unveiling the stark contrast between bias embedded in systemic constructs and integrity forged in battle's crucible. Harmon, once assured in his prosecution, observed with unease, sensing the shift against him. The prosecution's case loomed frayed under the new light. Its weaponry of assumptions and inaccuracies began to crumble under the general's testimony, punctuated by his reverence for character and devotion. "I have seen Marcus Delmont in situations that test the essence of a man's character," the general continued, his voice catching only briefly with emotion. "He stood honorably even when facing the darkest of odds. It is our duty to see him truly, not merely through lenses colored by prejudice." This litany of testimonials added an unbreakable layer of validity to Marcus's defense, offering an intricate grove of protection that Harmon's prosecution could not easily penetrate. It was then that the defense seized its moment, bringing new witnesses, character re-references, and military compatriots who amplified Marcus's enduring standing within armed ranks. As testimony piled upon testimony, the essence of Marcus Delmont emerged, an integrated narrative of integrity, perseverance, and quiet dignity amidst turbulent storms. For those watching, the revelation was transformative. Each revelation chipped away at the edifice of bias, inviting reconsideration of what true justice entails. When the general stepped down, the courtroom resonated with a hushed respect, a testament to the conviction that had just been publicly affirmed. Marcus remained calm, yet his countenance seemed to convey gratitude and an acknowledgment of the monumental support being revealed. Harmon, meanwhile, confronted an invigorated defense, poised to capitalize on the general's testimony. Each pivot, each recross, demonstrated that control had decisively and perhaps irrevocably shifted. As proceedings adjourned for a recess, a medley of thoughts pervaded the halls. The public, now alert to the broader implications of Marcus's trial, reckoned with the trial's ongoing pulse of undercurrents, swiftly rewriting a narrative that once accepted superficial truths without question. News outlets exploded with soundbites, framing this trial not merely as a question of one man's fate, but as a re-evaluation of systemic justice. Outside the courtroom, Marcus found a brief moment amidst joined hands and reassuring grips shared with his family, drawing strength from their solidarity. The day had carved out new pathways through which hope might travel, and though the battle wasn't yet won, its direction had indeed been recalibrated. Subtly yet significantly, one step closer toward justice. Within the courtroom's heart, the battle between insidious bias and emergent truth played out with unsparing intensity, each heart aligned either in silent hope or unspoken fear. The general's words reverberated still, a beacon toward renewed perceptions, charting a course toward justice not merely considered, but actively pursued. The courtroom filled once more, like a theater brimming with an audience anxiously awaiting the next act in a profound play. The atmosphere was different now, energized, carrying with it the varied emotional weight of revelations unfolded and truths yet to be spoken. Public anticipation was palpable, embodied in the quiet determination stamped across the faces of all present. The testimony of the four-star general had shifted perspectives, molding the narrative clay into new forms yet again. As Marcus re-entered the courtroom, there was a change beyond the surface calm, a confidence replaying on his face like a dawn breaking in slow motion. His every step toward the defense table was deliberate, echoing resilience, inviting the room along in his momentum's wake. Jessica Rivers, ever the sentinel, stood ready to reconvene the myriad narratives flowing into an unstoppable torrent of truth. The seats filled rapidly, hubbub expanding into quiet murmurs before cascading silence encased them all in a vigil, expectant of undefined promise. It was as if everyone acknowledged, perhaps subliminally, that today's hours would steer them nearer to a climactic revelation, one that could redefine Marcus's standing and Justice's role. The judge, a steady figure amidst the animated drama, called to order. Proceedings continued with the prosecution, visibly recalibrated from the prior class of errors now starkly illuminated. They could not readily counter the weight amassed by the general's revelations, an immense repository of respect layered upon Marcus's collected dignity. The room was teeming with an identity, shifting from rigid objectivity towards earnest equity. Marcus watched, immersed yet detached, a study in focused endurance as the prosecution grappled anew with their case. Edward Harmon, aware of the day's tightening screws, made a concerted effort to reclaim narrative brevity, desperate for a foothold amidst increasingly slippery evidence. But what emerged was not a definitive grasp but a fragmented response, mired in labyrinths they couldn't escape. Their attempts to cast doubt were like echoes of moves seen countless times before, now seeming superficial against the backdrop of tangible truths spotlighted the day prior. Inside that controlled space, the public's hunger for honest appraisal and clarity swung the pendulum favorably. They watched as the prosecution's stamina waned under defensible rectitude. They scanned for every fleck, the nervous tap of a finger, the crisp crumple of repositioned paper, the steely yet tense exchanges between Harmon and his associates, communicating a pressing urgency that read almost like resignation. The defense, strengthened by alliances forged research and exposed bright truths, felt the shift like a palpable wind. Jessica capitalized on it, steering her narrative with precision, critical evidence brought forth, which she sequenced to her grand design, intricately unspooled doubts insinuated by the prosecution. Her words cut through legal confines with the certainty of skilled navigation, a mariner directing an intricate course through rough seas. As more witnesses took the stand, the room embraced their retelling of Marcus, envisioning scenarios of honor and empathy, his embodiment as a protector and kin, a man whose character outshone shadows long cast over his name. Their stories painted visions of integrity, creating a new tapestry from shared threads of valor, threaded with commitment, unmarred by racial veils. And then a poignant interruption across a communal inhale. Harmon requested a moment, a chance to confer privately with his counterparts. The request spoke of a recalibration, a conservative clutch against dissipating influence. It was not defeat writ large, but the outlines began to show. The gallery exchanged sidelong glances of understanding, a shared confidency that seemed to mirror a trial's true unraveling within a place metered by space law's constriction. When court resumed, Harmon's resolve was a study in contrast. His force, though outwardly stalwart, now carried marks of distillation-strained composure beneath a mask of professional obligation. He acknowledged the truth recognized across the room's silent expanse. Marcus's trial had become more than happenstance or segregated justice. It was an expurgation embraced by all who affected it. The granite walls of ideals, so deeply eroded by persuasions long lost to equilibrium, bore witness to the day's fractures finding balance anew. Marcus, observing as Harmon delivered his closing remarks, understood with profound clarity that the truth they relied upon wouldn't dim. It had taken root, an unyielding presence inviting process and audience to arrive at their conclusions honestly and unflinchingly. As proceedings paused once more, spanning contemplations cast shadows over landings too unfamiliar to retrace but too vital to ignore, they understood, as witnesses encased within this trial, that its true judgment loomed not only over Marcus, but through the corridors of systemic justice, each player an embodiment of an emerging resolve. Outside, the city awaited its echo, ready to reconcile inherited stories with this newfound comprehension. But within these brick and oak confines, they breathed collectively, hearts laden in hope, hearts determined to listen beyond the clamor of biased retrofits, to where Marcus's standing, like justice's undimmed flame, awaited the arrival of truth. The courtroom was silent, almost reverent, as the judge reconvened the session. Air, thick with expectancy, curled around spectators, wrapping them in threads of anticipation and introspection. Marcus sat at the defense table, his calm demeanor a lighthouse in the storm of scrutiny. Today held promise, a reckoning with truths now illuminated, yet subject to the court's discerning gaze. Jessica Rivers was poised, her composure a reflection of countless strategic sessions and late-night recalibrations. Her mind was a lattice of arguments, evidence threaded with purpose, ready to unfurl like a banner of precision. Her team sat equally resolute, eyes fixed forward, each poised to wield their expertise like finely honed instruments, amplifying the narrative of truth they'd painstakingly constructed. The morning proceedings shifted gears with the introduction of new evidence, photographs, surveillance tapes, and audio clips that painted a mosaic surrounding the day of Marcus's arrest. Jessica approached each with deliberate clarity, threading her narrative carefully, weaving through inconsistencies laid bare by sheer accumulation of truth. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she intoned gently, yet firmly, "what you see here isn't just proof of Marcus Delmont's innocence, but a testament to the clarity beyond conjecture, a truth distilled by time, illuminated here and now." Her voice resonated with conviction, awakening courtroom observers from passive receptacles to active participants in a bridged understanding, a dynamic seeping into the very foundations of justice at play. Eyes unwrapped themselves to examine the exposed reality, reconsidering narratives that had once carried unquestioned weight. As the evidence revealed itself, like a puzzle piecing its way toward clarity, Harmon shifted uncomfortably. He wore the countenance of a soldier suddenly aware that their battlefield lay vulnerable beneath unseen eyes. Jessica's narrative dismantled presumptions woven into previous arguments, each piece a testament to intention and deep-seated. The assembled mosaic illustrated not only Marcus's circumstances on that fateful day, but anchored him in a wider context that demanded consideration, empathy, and critical reflection. Beyond the barrage of visual aids, voices, distant, invisible, yet unabashed, began to fill the room. Witness testimonies, recorded and submitted meticulously, poised to enter the court's reckoning. Their authenticity lay undisturbed by bias or fear. Their words carried an unbiased mirror reflecting Marcus's exceptional character and unblemished service. Silence stood guard as tapes played, recounting the day's events. The courtroom breathed in their echoes, each testimony layered with experiences intertwining Marcus's compassion and dignity. Friend, family, colleagues, a connected chorus of unmistakable admiration. Meanwhile, Marcus absorbed it all, mute but far from detached. Memories unfurled behind his watchful eyes, a dance across sands swept by desert wind, intangible loyalties shared during hushed moments after skirmishes, forged in the crucible of shared hardship and sacrifice. The weight of their voices was buoyant in his chest, tethered not just to past experiences, but anchoring present hope, proof of a world where distinctions lay not in color, but in kinship. Harmon attempted rebuttal, piecing together legal jargon as one constructs defenses from straw. Shadowed defenses aimed to cast doubt upon unyielding truths, but the prosecution's case now seemed but a haze wavering, fragile against the substance Jessica unveiled with deft precision. To mitigate the wobbling uncertainties, Harmon recalled officers to the stand, hoping to reignite the dwindling coals of authority. But their responses, tired anecdotes driven hard against illuminated scrutiny, fell listless, a dim echo against the illuminated clarity Marcus's defense phoenix-like bore skyward. The afternoon valley passed, a breath held between checkmate and reveal. The elucidation of unapologetic truths traversed toward culmination. Yet the courtroom remained attuned, breath bated, hopeful of understanding's embrace or disfellowship disallowed. Marcus's presence was an unyielding testimony, an incarnation of known truths wrapped within china walls of unrepentant belief. As the day drew to a close, leaving expectation on uplifted precipices, the courtroom exhaled. They knew what lay, in anticipation's breath, through discovery painstakingly carved, through justice unsheathed beyond conjecture's reach. As Marcus and the defense rose to leave, murmurs rippled through the gallery, a hushed conversation 2 days coming and yet spanning lifetimes. Eyes studiously left untouched upon these hallowed hardwood benches now examined anew with a lighter, hopeful clarity, each tailored with courage shared by speaker and governmental resolve. Outside, where the public aquiver awaited, the dialogue carried forth, no longer whispered but heralded, summoned by voices free from shrouds of bias, bright-tongued promises traced boldly, for the first time, beyond murk interspersed echoes silenced. In the drained quiet of those sacred walls, only echoes remained, markings of a trial primed upon the altar of justice, reframed, a narrative irrevocably risen into recognition, courage, once seated soundlessly, now transformed into defiant echoes, newfound for futures not alone. The courtroom's tension was palpable, an electric anticipation charging the air as Marcus Delmont rose from his seat. Silence cascaded like curtain folds across the room as he moved toward the stand. This was an unplanned moment, unscripted by Jessica Rivers' meticulous strategy, yet it unfolded with a quiet power. Every eye tracked his movement, each heart holding its breath, as if the act of speaking might fracture the fragile veneer of quiet constructed through hours of testimony and cross-examination. Marcus, the silent sentinel of so many previous days, now stepped forward to add his voice, the fulcrum upon which this trial was pivoting. As he settled into his seat on the witness stand, the room remained hushed, a sleepy hum of excitement discreetly moving through skin and bone. Marcus scanned the courtroom, finding the faces of his family among the many, before focusing on the jury who held the scales of his fate. Jessica approached with care, acknowledging the weight of this departure from their original plan, trusting Marcus's instinct to speak as an integral element in this unfolding truth. She wouldn't lead him, but enable his already glowing narrative to brighten. Marcus leaned into the microphone, meeting the jury with his gaze that offered stories even words didn't capture. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady, a calm contrast to the whirlpool of emotions each syllable traversed. "I haven't spoken much during these proceedings because, for so long, I believed my actions spoke for themselves. Today, I want you to see what those actions meant." His voice adopted a cadence that mirrored his military precision. Each word landed with intent, saturated with experience far beyond courtroom walls. Marcus didn't recount his decorated service or tangible accolades, but spoke of simpler things, moments of humanity he witnessed, of moments where a choice between equity and advantage lay heavy underfoot. "I've worn a uniform most of my life," he continued, "and I've known what it feels like to embody principles beyond myself. I was trained to protect, to see beyond the immediate, to understand the bigger picture." He paused, each word chosen like the careful setting of stones in a river, steady in their presence. His narrative meandered through battles fought not only abroad but within, syncopating between moments of disciplined resolve and the quiet burdens of carrying unseen prejudices. Marcus showcased not his own prowess, but illuminated shared victories and dreams interwoven with community and country. Outside the courtroom, the world seemed to pause, tuning into the trial's paths, etched both inside brick confines and along digital highways traced by curious eyes. Listeners leaned in, their appetite for an unvarnished view of justice mingling with curiosity and compassion. Within the courtroom, Marcus spoke, not rhetorically, but from a reservoir deep, set by years wielding firearms and firm handshakes alike, a repository for silent dignity and resilient fortitude. "And when I faced discrimination," he elaborated, making eye contact with the jury, "it didn't make me question my commitment to justice. It confirmed its necessity." His words were more than a defense. They were an invocation, a call for understanding that reached beyond manufactured walls. Reverberations thrummed through the room as the jury absorbed his message, parsing through vocal bars rooted not in desperate alibis but in courage resting unembellished. There was raw disbelief, entwined with the resonance of his truth, an opportunity realized to step closer amidst stenches of neglect, inviting every listener deeper into the folds of reconciliation and introspect. His story drew to a close, each thread woven into a cohesive narrative that championed not just personal vindication, but a trial by conscience, seeking truth in a world so often content with its absence. And as he returned to his seat beside Jessica, the room possessed a new clarity, an alchemy nourished by shared dignity and accountability. Transformed through Marcus's unswayed transparency, the courtroom buzzed before allowing silence to solidify the import of his words. Through layer upon layer peeled back by Marcus's presence, the trial felt less like a quest against baseless accusation and more a collective unearthing, a warmer horizon where humanity finally saw itself within another's reflection, in newfound unity. The gavel called adjournment, but the day's meaning lingered, an indelible imprint, echoing amidst whispers and unbridled conversations, truth's edges, sharper than conjecture's hollow, once immaculate walls. Marcus's testimony endured beyond the trial's rooms, beyond segmented bricks laid in concrete definition, traversing ears open now to justice reclaimed, a richer, lyrical denouement written for us all. As dawn touched the rooftops with a golden embrace, the city seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of the day's proceedings. Inside the courtroom, light poured through the windows, casting shadows that danced across faces etched with determination, uncertainty, and an undercurrent of hope. Today, the cops who had handcuffed Marcus were to testify, and their anxiety was palpable. Like a ripple in still waters, the officers entered the room, their movements stiff, eyes searching the room with a mixture of defiance and unease. Their once unquestioned authority felt precarious today, the bedrock of their narrative shaken by the palpable shift in courtroom dynamics. Marcus's testimony had not only invigorated the defense, it had cast a glaring light upon their actions, a scrutiny they hadn't anticipated. As the first officer took the stand, silence descended, heavy and oppressive, like an unyielding fog rolling through. The officer, a man of average height and blunt features, adjusted the microphone with shaking hands. His once steadfast aura appeared frayed, nervous energy seeping into his every action. Harmon stood at attention, a sentinel guarding a narrative teetering on the precipice of unraveling. "Officer Collins," Harmon began, exuding an outward confidence that belied the underlying strain, "can you recount the events leading to Mr. Delmont's arrest?" His words were measured, a practiced cadence aimed at reasserting control over a truth now exposed to the light. Officer Collins, after a pause, began speaking, his voice faltering slightly at first as he recounted the day in question. He painted a picture of authority and protocol, describing their actions as nothing more than professional diligence. Yet, woven within his words was an undercurrent of unease, a barely concealed anxiety that his narrative might not stand under the weight of newfound evidence. His testimony was clinical, perhaps too much so, lacking the organic truthfulness that resided within Marcus's voice. It felt rehearsed, each phrase carefully selected like pieces in a fragile tower of fragile implications, a precarious balance that could tip with the slightest misstep. Jessica listened intently, a hawk studying the landscape for inconsistencies and weaknesses. When her time came to cross-examine, she approached the stand with a disarming calm. Her questions, incisive and deliberate, peeled back layers of assurance to reveal fractures beneath the officer's narrative. "Officer Collins," Jessica articulated with surgical precision, "you mentioned protocol aimed at ensuring safety. Did it not also involve assessing situations devoid of bias?" Her voice, though gentle, carried the weight of Justice's gaze, formidable and unavoidable. The officer hesitated, aware that his response needed to tread carefully. "Yes, that is standard procedure, ma'am," he replied, words ringing hollow against the backdrop of scrutiny. "And yet," Jessica continued, seizing the moment, "was there a clear, unbiased assessment in Mr. Delmont's case, or did preconceived notions cloud your judgment?" It was a question that punctuated the room, a lightning bolt striking through the veneer of practiced responses. Her inquiry injected the courtroom with quiet anticipation, a collective intake of breath, each observer waiting for the defining chime from within the silence. Officer Collins shifted in his seat. Struggle etched across his features. "We acted on the information we had at the time," he offered weakly, though the weight of his earlier convictions seemed to erode under Jessica's gaze. The discomfort was evident, and even Harmon's stoic demeanor couldn't mask the cracks forming in their narrative armor. Marcus watched quietly, the inner storm calm yet alert. The officer's anxiety was a reaffirmation that beneath the web of formalities lay personal biases, with consequences most significant, a truth slowly unshackled by the trial's unfolding. As the next officer took the stand, the courtroom was attuned, collectively sharper, tuned to the nuances both spoken and unspoken. Each question, each answer peeled back additional layers, revealing moments where judgment occluded justice. Words, coupled with Marcus's testimony, shaped an undeniable current binding every spectator's attention. The effect was cumulative, a magnifying glass burning through pretense, illuminating truth in rawest form. The officers, once symbols of authority, now appeared caught within the scrutiny of those truths. Struggling under the weight of their decisions' reflections, the day drew toward its conclusion, each testimony leaving shadows that flirted with vanished daylight. The officers, visible relics of a flawed system, exited the stand, their carefully constructed narratives crumbling under the charged scrutiny. Marcus remained an anchor on this turbulent sea, tethered by truth's unclouded horizon. The reassurance from an afternoon session drawing closer to justice was evident, a shore continuous with currents unwavering. As the gavel echoed through the chamber, adjournment brought forth a more vital understanding that the trial was no longer merely a junction. It was a turning tide, a powerful repudiation that demanded both reformation and reconciliation by all who bore witness. As the courtroom reconvened, the air was thick with anticipation. The past days had been transformative, casting Marcus in a light untainted by accusation, while laying bare the urgency of systemic reevaluation. Today, all eyes were drawn to the main event. The four-star general was about to speak again, this time offering something unexpected, an apology. The general's presence was once again a magnetic force. As he took his place at the front, silence blanketed the room. His stature, an unwavering symbol of authority and integrity, demanded attention even before words formed upon his lips. This moment transcended the typical cadence of court proceedings. It was a moment of reckoning. His voice was solemn, each word measured. I stand before you as representative of not just our armed forces, but as a person who believes in justice, uncompromised by bias. Today I have come to offer an apology, not just to Marcus Delmont, but to everyone who has ever been wronged by the very systems meant to protect them. The weight of his words settled heavily across the room. The courtroom, a space balancing logic with emotion, was charged with a palpable energy that felt like static before a storm. They weren't just words. They were a reflection of responsibility, a recognition of institutional fractures exposed by Marcus's trial. He continued, his gaze unwavering, voice smooth as it sliced through the air. Marcus Delmont has served his country with honor, an honor we should strive to reflect in all our actions. His treatment on that day did not reflect the principles we uphold as the backbone of our nation. For that, and in failing our shared ideals, I deeply apologize. The sincerity of his apology was a balm, a murmur of justice permeating every corner of the courtroom. It was a rare humility from such a high office, rare in itself, but doubly so in its public acknowledgement of failure. The effect was immediate. A collective intake of breath swept through the crowd, registering the gravity of his words. For in that apology lay a promise of change. In it, people saw the outline of a better system striving to emerge from the chaos of its own making. Jessica Rivers watched keenly. Her eyes, full of both resolve and compassion, mirrored the significance of this moment. She understood that this was more than an individual's acquittal. It was a clarion call for systemic introspection, a shift from superficial correction to genuine transformation. Marcus listened intently, his serene presence a testament to the steadfast resilience that had guided him through turbulent tides. Each syllable spoken felt like a validation of the fight he hadn't chosen but had dared to stand up against with grace. The officers who had testified earlier sat in stark contrast to his poise. Their earlier bravado was replaced by a mix of contemplation and discomfort, recognition that their involvement in Marcus's arrest was scrutinized under a lens of genuine accountability. The general's statement closed with a resolution, a commitment towards reform, towards ensuring that such circumstances wouldn't repeat. His vow mirrored the echo in the room, a vow that many hoped would transform into palpable action, a promise to honor the shared oath of justice above reproach. As the general stepped away, the courtroom seemed changed, a faint percussion resonating with the new, unbounded potentialities his speech had unlocked. An apology was not an end, but a beginning. It was the first step on a path towards a justice system clear in its vision and resolute in its execution. Marcus's family exhaled collectively, the tension of the prior days visibly melting away. They were lifelong advocates of his innocence, soldiers in their right, wielding love and belief as their ultimate defense. Outside the courtroom walls, the city vibrated with echoes of the trial as it spread to the masses. Digitally shared, dissected, and declared, a chain reaction began, sparking conversations from coffee shops to living rooms, each person touched by an apology that resonated with both painful pasts and hopeful futures. The courtroom lights dimmed and the gavel's closure beckoned to recess, but not before a final glance between Marcus and the general, a shared acknowledgement that justice's slow grind had entered a new gear, propelled by courage neither man alone could have harnessed. Inside four walls that had witnessed the unfolding of significant historical milestones, a fresh spark ignited the room. Marcus's calm revolved around them like a gentle breeze, awakening potential for ongoing beauty through understanding. With the proceedings paused, the day allowed contemplation, a chance for everyone involved to reflect on their roles within a justice system, recalibrating under newfound optics. Each moved forward, carrying the day's profound gravity within, a gravity promising to linger, insistently echoing through the halls of justice. The courtroom was a storm rallying to a head, charged and electric as the jury found their seats. There was an unspoken understanding that they stood at the precipice of something momentous, ready to bear witness to the culmination of everything that had come before. Marcus Delmont's fight was not solely against the charges laid upon him, but against the long-standing shadows of systemic injustice. Jessica Rivers stood steadfast, a bulwark of composure amidst the swirling anticipation. The defense's closing arguments were to be her final symphony in this arena, notes meticulously composed to resonate with both heart and mind. She glanced briefly at Marcus, his silent strength affirming the stakes resting heavy on this day. "Members of the jury," she began, her voice steady, deliberate, carrying the room's weight on each word. "In the days that we've gathered here, we haven't just witnessed a trial. We've been part of a chorus, echoing truths long silenced. This case is about more than Marcus Delmont. It's about who we choose to be when confronted with injustice." Her cadence rose and fell like a practiced storyteller, wrapping each phrase around the truths Marcus had voiced from the witness stand. Truths rendered not simply as defenses, but as invitations to look beyond the veil of prejudice into the realm of possibility. Jessica walked the jury through a narrative woven from the evidence and testimonials presented, the video clip revealing disproportionate force, the accounts of Marcus's exemplary character, the military accolades worn without conceit but with unwavering resolve. She painted a picture of a man wronged not by law, but by the very fabric of bias interwoven with his arrest. "The prosecution asks you to see Marcus through the lens of assumption, while we ask you to see him through the lens of humanity," she continued, locking eyes with each juror in turn. "It's imperative that we recognize our duty not to perpetuate those biases, but to dismantle them. For Marcus is not just on trial. Justice itself is being scrutinized." Her words interwove with the silence, creating a tapestry both anchored and alive. It was a plea not only for Marcus's acquittal, but for the awakening of justice beyond inscribed statutes and regulations. Jessica's conviction invited the jurors to redefine justice within themselves. Outside the world waited, an audience suspended in collective breath. News outlets buzzed with snippets of the courtroom, their headlines painted with the strokes of Jessica's arguments, the general's apology, and Marcus's unyielding dignity. These elements intertwined to form a narrative captivating the public consciousness. Within the courtroom, Harmon prepared his closing arguments, a final bid to uphold a prosecution that now seemed threadbare against the defense's persistent truth. His voice, usually a masterful instrument of persuasion, now struggled to find its footing in the transformed landscape. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Harmon began, his words stilted compared to the grace of Jessica's delivery, "the law is an anchor. It keeps us grounded amidst the chaos. What I present to you are the facts as we interpreted them." Yet, even as he spoke, the room felt the tenuous nature of his assertions, strained under the weight of evidence holding Marcus in a protective embrace. His attempts to reconstruct the prosecution's argument were akin to fortifying a sandcastle against the rising tide. Marcus observed with an unwavering calm, his presence a force field around gently oscillating truths. His silence reverberated as loudly as any argument. His strength buoyed not merely by the defense's fortitude, but by truth's rising swell beneath him. As Harmon concluded, Jessica prepared to retake her seat, the exchanges marking a closing ceremony before ultimate judgment. Marcus shared a glance with Jessica, a moment unspoken yet finished, of mutual respect for each component, crafted in this legal symphony. The judge's gavel resonated through the room, signaling the end of arguments. The jury was tasked with weighing not only the charges but the moral alleles intertwined within. They departed to deliberate a temporary suspension, a bridge as the nation watched and dissected each shared detail outside the courtroom's immediate periphery. As the day waned, the courthouse assumed a vigil-like serenity, each corner holding echoes of truth, marked by steps aligning towards potential transformation. Marcus's family gathered around him, their solidarity profound and supportive amidst the quiet chaos stirring outside. In the wake of closing arguments, contemplation reigned within courtroom confines, stretching beyond into spirited conversations, each challenging preconceived notions, each urging justice unrefined by prejudice's shadows. The weight for the verdict stretched onward, carrying within it the hopes and fears of many beyond Marcus alone. The trial of one man's integrity had grown into a congregation of truth-seekers, each soul bound by an undeniable resonance, the promise perpetuated by justice unbound, justice reflective of shared humanity. That promise reverberated, enclosing the courthouse, promising to lay highways for tomorrow where Marcus's narrative seeded understanding, their roots crossing bridges rarely traversed. A verdict awaited, but already a new journey began, shaped by truths now illuminated, one where justice belonged, uncompromised, to and for all. The city vibrated with anticipation, a pulse synchronized with the collective breath held by those awaiting the jury's decision. Inside the courthouse, the air was dense with expectation, each moment heavy with the weight of potential futures. Marcus Delmont, seated at the defense table, exuded a serene resolve, poised on the brink of a verdict that would echo far beyond these walls. Jessica Rivers was a model of composed intensity, her final arguments woven into the jurors' thoughts. She now sat with a patience that belied the turmoil within. Her eyes remained locked on Marcus, a beacon of calm they both shared amidst the maelstrom of public scrutiny and private hope. The courtroom was packed near capacity, an audience both familiar and steadfastly invested in this profound outcome. Reporters leaned forward, pens hovering, capturing the essence of a grand narrative that had captured the nation's consciousness. Families, veterans, and everyday citizens represented a cross-section of society, united by a shared pursuit of justice. As the courtroom doors parted to admit the jury's return, all eyes were drawn to their entry, the silent procession carrying the weight of judgment on their shoulders. Their expressions were inscrutable, a mosaic of gravitas and reflection as they took their seats, ready to pronounce a decision molded by days of intensive deliberation. Heartbeats synchronized with the ticking clock, each second a meticulous countdown to truth's unveiling. Jessica and Marcus exchanged a brief, steady glance, a silent acknowledgement of the journey shared, a testament to resilience, hope, and the unwavering belief that justice, once awakened, was an unstoppable force. The judge's voice broke the seething stillness, a gavel of calm amidst a sea of emotion. Has the jury reached a verdict? The inquiry hung, suspended heavy in the air, demanding a response that could alter trajectories not just for Marcus, but for the symbol of vindication and systemic scrutiny this case had become. The jury four-person stood, their gaze locked with a resolute fortitude, testament to the discussions held in earnest. "We have, Your Honor," they announced, handing a sealed envelope to the clerk, who in turn delivered it to the judge, a ritual honed over countless verdicts yet carrying a unique significance today. The judge opened the envelope, the courtroom breath collective and taut as a coiled spring, silence stretched like a bowstring about to release, the weight of the moment timeless yet demanding conclusion. The judge's eyes scanned the verdict before nodding, ready to voice the jury's decision. In the case of Marcus Delmont, charged with obstruction and resisting arrest, we, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. The words rippled through the room, each syllable a stone dropped into the pond of expectation. its reverberations immediate and profound. Relief flooded the room, a tangible wave, as palpable as sunlight breaking through heavy cloud cover. Marcus's family embraced one another, tears of joy and relief flowing freely, poignant against the backdrop of struggle and perseverance. Jessica gripped Marcus's hand, a moment of shared triumph. Their battle, fought with dignity and unwavering commitment to truth, had cleared the path to justice. A young veteran in the back whispered a soft prayer of thanks. His hand formed into a salute of respect and solidarity for a fellow soldier and for justice finally observed. Journalists scribbled furiously, their notes translating into headlines that would capture the nation's attention before the day was through. Amidst the clamor of jubilation and the subdued hum of acknowledgement, Marcus stood his presence a vivid proclamation of resilience and integrity. His eyes, though reflective of the overwhelming tide of gratitude, carried not just personal victory, but the validation of collective effort. His voice, when he addressed those present, was clear, resolute, and echoing with the gravity of his journey. "Thank you," he uttered, his words simple yet imbued with layers of complexity only truth could reveal. "Thank you for seeing me for who I am. This is not just my victory, it's ours. Let it be a reminder that in unity and understanding we find strength." As he made his way out of the courtroom, Marcus's path was lined with supporters offering handshakes, respectful nods, and silent oaths that this moment would continue to inspire. The general, a towering figure amid the throng, clasped Marcus's shoulder, a subtle yet profound acknowledgement between men bonded by shared understanding and renewed hope. Outside, the city roared to life, echoing the hope and triumph that cascaded outward from the courtroom steps. Marcus's case had etched new pathways toward genuine justice. Pathways forged by truth unfettered and solidarity unabashed. For Marcus Delmont, justice had come not merely as a conclusion, but as a beginning, one that promised to amplify voices historically silenced, a chapter unwritten, but shaped by the echoes of his profound journey through the wilderness of systemic challenge. In this new dawn, as the city exhaled in collective celebration, the story of Marcus Delmont reverberated across open hearts and public discourse, a testament to the timeless drum of justice, relentless and unstoppable, ever persistent in its march toward a brighter horizon. The city seemed to pause for a moment, exhaling slowly as if to acknowledge the weight and significance of the events concluded just hours before. In the quiet aftermath of the verdict, a new dawn crept over the horizon, painting the skyline with soft hues of pink and gold, colors of hope reborn, set against the hard edges of skyscrapers and structures steeped in history. Marcus Delmont stood at the courthouse steps, the world around him a tapestry of vibrant life and muted reflection, every moment thrumming with newfound possibility. His family clustered close, a circle of unwavering support that had remained strong through every twist and turn of this extraordinary journey. This day, this moment, was a victory not just for him, but for all who believed in justice's mighty, albeit sometimes slow, cause. As the morning air filled with the melodic chatter of birds, a soft breeze carried with it echoes of conversations beginning to unfurl throughout the city. Marcus's story echoed in cafes where the barista poured steaming lattes, on buses rumbling down avenues lined with sycamores, and in homes where breakfast was accompanied by whispers of change. Justice had been served, and the narrative was now a legacy, a touch point for future generations to recall and rebuild from. Journalists finished typing their last lines, their stories weaving Marcus's triumph into the greater fabric of ongoing dialogues about race, identity, and accountability within the systems that governed everyday lives. The trial had transcended its particulars, capturing the imagination of a nation eager for transformation, and illustrating how personal resolve can ignite systemic change. Marcus took a moment to absorb it all, standing quietly amidst this new reality before turning his face to the sun. He knew the importance of this victory was not his alone to bear. and he pledged silently to ensure that this narrative of courage and redemption continued, vibrant and resilient, far beyond courtroom walls. Beside him, Jessica offered a silent nod of mutual respect, a gesture rich with shared understanding and unspoken acknowledgement of battles fought and won. Their journey together had been one of perseverance, and now it stood as a beacon for those who would follow in their footsteps, demanding a world where justice was not just a distant echo, but a living, breathing presence in every hall of judgment. The general, too, had emerged from the courtroom to stand with Marcus on the steps, a public gesture of favor and an affirmation of continued solidarity in the fight for justice, unblemished by As he shook Marcus's hand, he whispered promises of reforms that had been sparked by these proceedings, a testament to the enduring impact of Marcus's resolve. And so, Marcus walked down those grand stone steps, each stride a measure of his continuing journey towards healing, towards advocacy, towards the countless futures his battle had opened. Around him, the throng cheered, but Marcus stayed grounded, feeling not the weight of his actions, but the buoyancy of their hope. The city, vibrant and alive, pulsed in time with his heartbeat. As he and his family merged anonymously back into the bustle of the world, the narrative of Marcus Delmont began to weave its way into the lives of people ordinary and extraordinary alike, inspiring accountability, empathy, and action. Each face he passed, whether aware of him or simply sharing the same morning light, became part of a greater whole, a tapestry in which Marcus's story was a crucial, transformative thread. The people carried forward with them not only the outcome of one trial, but the enduring call for justice that it represented. And as the city exhaled into its day, Marcus's story continued to echo across its streets, through the lives of those touched by his perseverance. It was a story that resonated within the soul of justice, whispering promises of equity, respect, and enduring hope. In this grand urban symphony where individual voices occasionally rose above the fray, the world listened, and the promise of justice remained, a steady, unwavering drumbeat in its relentless pursuit of truth, compassion, and lasting change. And the city exhaled as its newest day dawned. The request for Section 17 is unusual because, structurally, the story of Marcus Delmont was designed to conclude within the previous sections. However, within the bounds of this narrative, there is still room to consider the broader ripples and reflections that extend from Marcus's story to the wider world. Let us look into this extended reality. In the wake of the trial, community dialogues intensified, each conversation like a small flame igniting a larger fire of understanding and reform. News of Marcus Delmont's vindication spread beyond the borders of his city, resonating with communities facing similar struggles across the nation. His story inspired grassroots movements, discussions in educational institutions, and policy considerations among those in power, becoming a template for navigating the complex intersections of race, duty, and justice. People began to gather in community centers, town halls, and places of worship, discussing the implications of Marcus's journey, examining their systems with critical eyes newly opened. Leaders in these communities took up Marcus's cause, advocating for training on implicit bias, pushing for transparency in policing practices, and ensuring that voices marginalized in the past were invited into the rooms where decisions were made. This wasn't just a reform of policy, it was a reformation of hearts and minds. Educators were among the first to incorporate Marcus's story into curricula, using it as a teaching moment about resilience, civic duty, and social justice. Classrooms buzzed with discussions about the power of one voice to alter a system, and students were encouraged to explore their roles in shaping the future of equitable justice. The military, too, felt the impact of the trial. Under the general's guidance, policies began to reflect the case's lessons, emphasizing accountability and integrity, both on and off the battlefield. Workshops on leadership and bias training were initiated, aiming to cultivate not just skilled soldiers but conscious, compassionate individuals committed to upholding the nobility of service in all its facets. Media outlets, while moving on to cover a myriad of global events, kept a thread of Marcus's story alive within their storytelling, periodically revisiting his journey to measure the progress sparked by his courage. It became a benchmark against which other social justice efforts were weighed, a testament to the undeniable power of truth. Marcus himself found new purpose beyond the courtroom victory. He began to speak publicly, sharing his experiences with audiences hungry for guidance on navigating similar challenges. His voice, calm yet powerful, became synonymous with perseverance and the relentless pursuit of justice. He advocated for outreach programs, supported legislative changes, and was unwavering in his commitment to ensuring that no one else would have to share his struggle alone. As the days turned to months, Marcus's story became an intricate part of the tapestry of social progress. It spurred legislative dialogues and small yet significant changes in local governments across the nation. Committees were formed, commissions set, to reassess and readjust where needed, all motivated by a shared commitment to justice as demonstrated by Marcus Delmont's ordeal and ultimate vindication. The city that had once held its breath in anticipation of a verdict now thrived as a beacon of change, a testament to the transformative power of a single story, unfurled with honesty and resolve. The narrative of Marcus Delmont became more than just a trial. It was a seed planted at the heart of societal consciousness, its bloom a vibrant reminder that justice, when persistently pursued, stands strongest when it speaks for all. As Marcus continued his journey, the heartbeat of change thrummed steadily beneath every step taken in the aftermath of his trial. It carried with it a message as old as the idea of justice itself, a message Marcus knew intimately and now shared with the world. Justice, like courage, is not a destination, but a journey, one strengthened with every stride toward truth and equity, a journey that for him and countless others would never cease. The impact of the trial waxed and waned in public consciousness, yet its influence endured palpably within Marcus Delmont's life, who now stood at the intersection of private reflection and public significance. His journey through the legal labyrinth had forever changed him, and now, beyond the courtroom's walls and the spike of public attention, an emotional release awaited, profound and necessary. Late one evening, as the city's hum softened into a quieter rhythm, Marcus found himself alone on a familiar bench overlooking the sprawling cityscape. It was a place he frequently visited during his most introspective moments, surrounded by trees whose leaves swayed gently in the night breeze, whispering secrets meant only for those willing to listen. Here, with the city stretched out below, Marcus finally allowed himself to feel the full breadth of emotions the trial had conjured. In this solitude, away from the watchful eyes of supporters and skeptics alike, tears came, an outpouring not of sorrow, but of relief and gratitude, of exhaustion and release. They marked the end of a chapter that had tested every fiber of his being and opened him to paths unforeseen. What poured forth in private was an acknowledgement of the solitude he had often felt during those quiet nights awaiting trial. Marcus was never truly alone, yet loneliness had threaded itself through moments of doubt and reflection. Now, he let those insecurities flow outward, carried into the ether by a night breeze that embraced them gently before setting them free. His thoughts danced back to his family, their faces ever present in his mind throughout the trial. Thoughts of his mother, her unwavering faith, a constant pillar of strength. His father's quiet resolve, an inheritance of fire tempered with wisdom. His siblings, the collective laughter and love that couldn't be diminished even in the darkest times. They had all journeyed with him, unseen yet deeply present. Marcus's inner dialogue meandered further to the new purpose he found in advocacy. His plans for continuing the fight, harnessing the momentum sparked by his ordeal, were becoming clearer by the day. He envisioned creating a foundation dedicated to supporting those wronged by systemic failures, offering both legal guidance and mental health support to individuals and families grappling with the outcomes of prejudice. In the stillness, Marcus also contemplated lessons learned about vulnerability and strength. He understood now that the two coexisted beautifully, symbiotically nurturing the other, crafting a narrative richer than he could have imagined. These were lessons to be shared in any forum he spoke. Stories of courage, not as isolated acts, but as continuous, communal journeys toward equity. Embedded within the rhythmic symphony of life's quieter moments was a sense of reconciliation, a powerful medley binding his past actions with future intention. Marcus breathed deeply, knowing that true healing, like justice, unfurls once recognized, nurtured by resilience, shared truth, and authenticity. As moonlight bathed the city in a silvery glow, Marcus rose, feeling lighter yet grounded by newfound purpose. The cityscape transformed into a vibrant quilt of stories, each lit window a beacon of potential, a testament to a shared humanity now intertwined inexorably with his own narrative. His emotional release that night was not the end, but a beginning, a new dawn after darkness, painted with the possibility of what was yet to come. Marcus walked away from the bench, a figure composed of stature and shadow and light, an embodiment of justice's continued revival. His next steps aligned with the truth he was now sworn to amplify, and with each new day Marcus Delmont would carry forward the wisdom etched by time and trial, a testament to strength acquired through adversity, eager to stir broader ripples across the pond of justice, a whisper softly building into an insistent, irrefutable song. In the weeks following the trial, Marcus Delmont navigated a landscape diverging sharply from its familiar contours. His case had drawn the spotlight's glare, inviting public interest not just in his exoneration, but in the systemic biases it unveiled. As a media frenzy continued to swirl, Marcus found himself at the crossroads of public perception and personal narrative. The media, with its insatiable appetite for sensationalism, often wielded his story like a malleable clay, reshaping it to fit narratives that fit their agenda. Some outlets championed Marcus as a modern-day hero, a symbol of resilience and justice won. Others, less scrupulous, sought angles more sensational than substantial, reducing his trials to bullet points designed for quick consumption rather than understanding. Digital headlines varied wildly, from the celebratory to the cynical. "Marine sniper defies odds, triumphs in court," read one, juxtaposed sharply against "Race, Justice, and the Courtroom, the Marcus Delmont phenomenon." His story, told and retold through so many filters, became a tapestry stretched across public consciousness, fragmented and piecemeal in places, richly textured in others. Yet for Marcus, this was uncharted territory. He understood the power of visibility, how stories need light to generate change. But amidst this spotlight came the persistent risk of oversimplification, of losing the nuances he fought so hard to surface. The challenge was clear: ensure his story held authenticity, that the conversation it sparked didn't fizzle out, or worse, turn reductive. Aware of the risk, Marcus sought to reclaim his narrative by engaging directly with media that valued depth over sensational soundbite. He accepted invitations to radio shows and podcasts, spaces where discussion could go beyond surface-level summaries. In these dialogues, Marcus found a platform not just to revisit his journey, but to focus on broader systemic issues, embedding his personal struggle within larger movements aimed at real change. On air, his voice was calm, measured, weaving through past events with an unshakable focus on the future. "This case," he articulated during one podcast, "was never just about me. It's a call to action, for reform, for holding systems accountable, and for ensuring it doesn't happen to others. We're not just talking about changing laws, we're changing lives." The media coverage, bended by distractions, still found instances of genuine impact to drive forward. Narratives of others similarly wronged began surfacing, stories echoing Marcus's own, gathered and disseminated not as isolated events, but as a chorus calling for reform. Each story revealed the fabric of systemic flaws, woven with bias, embroiled in historical oversight, As Marcus lent his name to causes promoting judicial reform and community empowerment, he encountered many who found courage in his journey. These connections girded him with fresh purpose, a validation of the belief that his voice wielded the power to foster meaningful dialogue. Amidst all this, Marcus remained steadfast, rooted in humility. The truth was not merely his to own, but to share and amplify. He recognized that while the media would eventually shift focus as new stories emerged, the change he sought to spark carried enduring potential, if nurtured by continuous engagement and action. With each interview, each public appearance, Marcus imparted the reminder that stories like his exist everywhere, just waiting for illumination. He understood the power not just of sharing truth, but of encouraging others to do the same, an invitation to tell their stories, to let light reshape their narrative canvas from shadows long cast over by systemic neglect. In the world around him, Marcus stood firmly as both a catalyst and a steward, fostering waves of change beyond courtroom drama, a beacon guiding those willing to navigate the complex, ongoing journey toward justice, imbued with equity and empathy. As the media landscape shifted, Marcus's tale endured, a touchstone inscribed within the annals of a movement not confined by headlines or column inches, but nourished by persistence and promise, ready to unfold through each new day's commitment to truth. Thus, in the vast, swirling domain of media's ever-changing tide, Marcus's steady voice emerged, a call to share every story yet silenced, a testament to truth made visible against a backdrop of ephemeral noise. In the intimate confines of Marcus Delmont's life, beyond the glare of cameras and the buzz of public discourse, his family dynamics presented a tableau of steadfast love and unwavering support. The trial had tested each member's resolve and unity, forging an even tighter bond through the crucible of adversity. His mother's quiet strength had been a cornerstone for Marcus throughout the ordeal. Her faith, immovable and constant, provided him with the courage needed to face each day. She was his first confidant, her early teachings of dignity and perseverance woven through every fiber of his being. The nights she spent praying, offering silent pleas for justice, became the spiritual backbone of Marcus's resolve. She remained a pillar, a testament to resilience passed down through generations. Marcus's father, a man of few words but profound wisdom, stood by with an enduring presence that fortified Marcus in moments of self-doubt. His once taciturn demeanor softened in those moments of paternal camaraderie, revealing layers of emotion usually cloaked in silence. Their conversations, often succinct, were rich with shared experience. His father's approval, a source of quiet pride within Marcus's heart. Through knowing glances and shared silences, they communicated an indomitable strength and a commitment to truth resonant within their family legacy. His siblings added vibrant colors to this tableau, their energy and unfaltering belief a powerful antidote to the trial's rigors. Marcus's younger sister, a fierce advocate in her right, had spearheaded grassroots efforts amongst peer networks, channeling her passion into tangible support during pivotal movements of public advocacy. Her actions, marked by youthful fervor and determination, infused their cause with momentum and attracted voices of her generation to the larger fight for justice. His older brother, a figure of stability, had been there every step of the way, managing logistics and acting as a buffer from external pressures. He possessed an innate understanding of the complexities Marcus faced, offering counsel and companionship during late-night talks that spanned past, present, and future. In his brother's presence, Marcus found solace, a mirror reflecting shared dreams and aspirations. This collective fortitude was Marcus's personal miracle, the unsung heroism marking each family member's roles in his journey. As the excitement of the verdict settled into a quieter rhythm, the family found themselves rallying around the shared vision their ordeal had inspired, plotting new paths forward, laybook etched with the lines of battles forged together. At family gatherings, laughter punctuated discussions of plans set in motion by the trial's outcome. Marcus's home became a hub for dialogue, a place where ideas flowed as freely as stories of resilience. There was talk of a foundation to aid others facing wrongful accusations, a haven offering legal aid and mental health support inspired by their own experience. Their table became a round table for action, strategy mingling with affection in equal measure. Their shared journey also brought moments of reflection, discussions highlighting the interplay of individual aspirations with collective responsibilities. The trial reaffirmed that, while Marcus's experience catalyzed change, it was the family's unified strength that truly empowered the movement forward. They knew that this unity, a core of mutual respect and love, would remain a guiding light through every future challenge, personal, communal, or societal. The ripples of Marcus's story continued to spread, but within the sanctuary of his home, family was both refuge and launching pad, a vital equilibrium of rest and activity preserved. And as new dawns crested on walks through parks or quiet evenings at home, Marcus felt the comforting embrace of family surrounding him, rooted in traditions of sharing, uplifted by visions yet to be fulfilled. In every conversation shared, every meal partaken, lay the profound understanding that family, his unwavering support system, was not just a circle closed upon itself. It was an expanding web, creating connections that stretched beyond their immediate experience toward the broader quest for justice and compassion. They realized that day-to-day actions, small acts of unity and kindness, stitched the fabric of the future they envisioned. Thus together they thrived, not simply enduring their shared trials, but transforming them into stepping stones toward a shared destination, a journey ever forward, defined by the love that had brought them so far, and the hope that would carry them through whatever came next. In the wake of his acquittal and subsequent media attention, Marcus Delmont found himself reflecting deeply on the impact this trial had on his military career. As a Marine sniper respected for his precision and dedication, Marcus's swift rise through the ranks had been guided by his unwavering commitment to duty and country. The trial, a storm that tested every facet of his integrity, had also irrevocably altered the trajectory of his professional life. Returning to the military, Marcus was greeted with a mixture of admiration and curiosity from colleagues at the base. Many saw him as a figurehead for resilience and justice, his story circulating as a beacon of hope for those who shared in prejudices marked by societal constructs. His superiors, recognizing the strength demanded by his ordeal, viewed him through lenses not just of tactical prowess, but of moral fortitude. The trial had revealed systemic issues not only within the judiciary, but it also sparked introspection within military ranks. It had illuminated the need for increased awareness and reform, fostering dialogues on race and identity, often left unaddressed within the confines of military life. Marcus's experience highlighted the importance of recognizing personal bias, an insight heralded as necessary for military cohesion and morale. As Marcus resumed active duty, he was acutely aware of the nuanced shifts this event had instigated. Conversations among fellow Marines were no longer limited to operational plans, but included discussions about empathy, leadership, and the roles each played in shaping an equitable environment. This deeper understanding, cultivated by Marcus's visibility, nurtured a more inclusive culture now blossoming among the ranks. Yet Marcus also faced the challenge of redefining his role within the military. No longer just a sniper, he had become a mentor, a guide for those navigating their paths amidst the evolving landscape of military life. He embraced this role wholeheartedly, recognizing that his influence extended beyond the battlefield to the minds and hearts of those he led. Under the guidance of the general who had once stood beside him in court, Marcus found himself part of think tanks focused on the intersection of ethics and duty. They worked together to develop training programs that addressed not only tactical skills but the core values of respect and integrity, exploring how these could be interwoven to strengthen the bonds of trust necessary for operation success. He was often invited to speak at various military panels and forums, sharing insights gleaned from his journey, emphasizing the need for perseverance and truth in the pursuit of justice. His talks weren't simply about recounting past struggles, but were geared toward envisioning brighter futures. True strength, Marcus would often say to his peers, lies in acknowledging weaknesses and striving to overcome them, stepping together toward a shared horizon. These words resonated with his audience, fostering a culture where acknowledging and tackling bias became an intrinsic part of teamwork and leadership. However, the ordeal had also shifted Marcus's personal aspirations. The courtroom battle had awakened within him a desire to advocate more fiercely for systemic change across broader landscapes. Inspired by this, he contemplated a future that included not only his military service but also potential roles in public advocacy, possibly even influencing policy to dismantle the barriers he encountered. As he balanced his duties with this newfound purpose, Marcus understood that the path forward would be a delicate dance, integrating his past with the limitless potential now awakened. His story continued to ripple through the military, one life touching another, kindling conversations each day that paved the way for enduring transformation. To Marcus, every mission, every deployment, and every conversation became an opportunity to instill the values this trial had underscored. His career, though altered, was not diminished. It stood elevated, revitalized, underscoring a more profound commitment to both personal and collective quests for justice and equity. In this journey, Marcus found strength not only within himself, but in the solidarity of comrades shaped by a shared commitment to the values they served, a collective echo of his story, crafting the future of military service out of lessons learned and ideals transformed. Thus, Marcus Delmont continued on, not just as a soldier of singular skill, but as a leader in an evolving dialogue, driving the currents of change ever forward, from the deserts of battlefields to the corridors of conscience within every military base he touched. In the days following Marcus Delmont's trial, the ripple effects extended deep into the judicial system. The verdict, coupled with the public attention on his case, acted as a catalyst for scrutiny and reform within the courts. Marcus's ordeal laid bare not only personal injustice, but a broader tapestry of systemic issues that could no longer be ignored. Judicial committees convened to reassess protocols, acknowledging the biases that had been spotlighted by the trial. At the heart of their discussions was not merely a desire for procedural reform, but an urgent call for a more profound cultural shift, a quest for equity and transparency long overdue within the system. Marcus's case became a touchstone for evaluating existing practices, urging the judicial system to recalibrate. Law schools across the country began incorporating his case into their curriculum, prompting students to explore not only the intricacies of legal precedents, but the ethical dimensions that underpin the practice of law. Professors heralded Marcus's trial as a pivotal example of how the system can both fail and be rectified through perseverance and truth. Discussions around implicit bias, systemic reform, and advocacy were energized by Marcus's narrative, inspiring a generation of future lawyers to consider the law not just as a profession, but as a vehicle for societal change. The case also caught the attention of advocacy groups and think tanks already engaged in the fight against wrongful convictions and systemic inequity. They rallied to Marcus's cause, leveraging the media spotlight to highlight similar cases, driving home the need for comprehensive reform. These groups, buoyed by Marcus's success, increased their lobbying efforts with lawmakers, emphasizing the importance of accountability and transparency within the judicial process. As these conversations unfolded, Marcus himself was invited to speak before several legal panels, sharing his story to further ignite the flame of reform. He eloquently articulated the need for a judiciary that reflects the diverse society it serves, advocating for ongoing education and training to dismantle entrenched biases. Justice should be a right, not a privilege, Marcus would state, his voice calm yet resonant, and the pursuit of justice demands courage not only within the courtroom but within the systems that surround it. His words served as a rallying cry, urging continuous introspection and action within legal circles. Judges and court personnel began participating in bias training, with workshops focusing on empathy and inclusion designed to educate and transform perspectives from within. The conversations Marcus sparked traveled the country, influencing policy discussions and leading to changes in how cases were reviewed and litigated. The reform movement also made its way to policymakers, prompting legislative proposals aimed at addressing judicial bias and enhancing oversight within the criminal justice system. Marcus's story highlighted the need for checks and balances, and lawmakers recognized their role in crafting legislation that enshrined fairness at every judicial level. Within the confluence of these efforts, Marcus found himself mentoring others who had similarly experienced injustice at the hands of the system. His guidance offered not just hope, but a roadmap for engaging with and transforming one's circumstances. This newfound purpose added depth to Marcus's mission, reinforcing the belief that individual change can indeed translate to institutional transformation. The world around him was a canvas in motion, painted with the strokes of justice's awakening. Each conversation, each legislative session, each classroom discussion contributed to a narrative redefined by courage and accountability. Marcus's story was one of many, a symphony amplifying under the vast skies of possibility and responsibility. In his quiet moments, Marcus would reflect on the pathways that had led to this point. Not just his own, but those shared by countless others who sought justice within a tangled system. His journey became emblematic of change born from adversity, offering a lens through which a brighter, more equitable future could be envisioned. For Marcus Delmont, the pursuit of justice was more than a personal battle. It was a lifelong commitment, a dynamic endeavor to inspire and effect profound change where it was needed most. And with each step forward, he carried the unwavering hope that justice, though sometimes delayed, would no longer be denied. Marcus Delmont's life had become a tapestry richly interwoven with newfound respect and recognition. The trials he faced in the courtroom had not only defined him, but had also redefined the space he now occupied within his community and beyond. In the wake of his exoneration, a profound shift had taken place, a redemption narrative that unfolded not just in public consciousness, but deeply within his own understanding of identity and purpose. The respect garnered through his ordeal extended far beyond mere acknowledgement of innocence. It was a respect rooted in his unwavering commitment to truth and justice, a testament to his character that inspired those who knew of his journey. The community that once watched the drama unfold now embraced Marcus as a leader, a beacon within an emerging movement for justice reform. Local leaders frequently sought Marcus's counsel, valuing the insights shaped through his personal battle against systemic inequities. He became a regular presence at town meetings, where discussions around community policing, equity, and racial justice found new momentum. Galvanized by his story, his perspective, grounded in lived experience, offered a critical lens through which solutions were crafted, strategies aimed at fostering trust and accountability within the system. Marcus' voice resonated within educational spaces as well, where he delivered lectures and participated in panel discussions. His narrative was woven into curricula, allowing students to learn not just about the law, but about the humanity at its core. As he shared his insights with young minds, Marcus found inspiration in their curiosity and passion, fueling his dedication to facilitate lasting change. Recognizing the power of collective storytelling, Marcus spearheaded initiatives that elevated marginalized voices, those who had similar experiences of injustice, yet hadn't received the recognition or dialogue their stories deserved. He organized workshops and forums, creating platforms where narratives of resilience could be shared and amplified, cultivating a community interconnected by shared dreams of equitable justice. Within Marcus's personal life, the web of respect and recognition enveloped not just his community engagements, but his relationships, enriching them with a depth earned through understanding and mutual growth. His family, always a source of unwavering support, saw in Marcus's newfound role a reflection of their own resilience, a shared journey marked by love and determination. Yet, respect and recognition brought with them the weight of responsibility. Marcus understood that his story, while uniquely his, was part of a broader tapestry of struggles and triumphs faced by others fighting for justice. He embraced this responsibility with humility, ever aware that the battle for equity was ongoing, requiring continuous effort and unwavering dedication. Aware of this, Marcus also dedicated time to introspection, to ensure that his outreach efforts remained grounded in authenticity and empathy. In moments of quiet, amidst nature or in his home, he reflected on his personal growth and the transformative power of community support. He understood that his role extended beyond being a symbol. It was about being a facilitator, creating spaces for others to be heard and respected. And so, Marcus Delmont became more than the man at the center of a high-profile trial. He became a living testament to the ideas of redemption and reform. His journey inspired not just admiration but action, an invitation for those around him to engage actively in crafting a fairer, more just world. The recognition he received was light reflected through the prism of shared human experience, each facet a reminder of the potential for change when truth is pursued relentlessly. Respect, then, was not merely given, it was earned, built upon by contributions to an expansive dialogue about misconduct, reform, and resilience. With each step he took, Marcus knew that the journey toward justice was far from complete. But his resolve, bolstered by respect and recognition, continued to illuminate paths forward, paths entwined with the promise of brighter tomorrows for all those committed to justice's enduring pursuit. In this journey, Marcus saw not just his own reflection, but a mirror of the world's potential, a reminder that redemption and respect, hard-won, have the power to heal and transform entire communities. The trial's conclusion initiated a new chapter not just for Marcus Delmont but for society at large. His narratives, seared into public consciousness, became a pivotal moment that inspired a broader movement, one clamoring for genuine reform, for lessons to be learned and lasting changes to be implemented. Across the nation, the ripple effect of Marcus's case was undeniable. Legal scholars, civic leaders, and activists convened to analyze its implications, drawing lessons on the potential for justice systems to evolve. It wasn't just about correcting a singular injustice, it was about preventing future ones, ensuring the next Marcus Delmont wouldn't have to face the same trials merely for being. Educational forums buzzed with renewed energy, where Marcus's story was dissected in classrooms. From high schools to universities, professors and students engaged in dynamic discussions exploring the mechanics of systemic bias and the essential reforms needed to dismantle it. These academic environments became incubators for ideas, burgeoning with innovative proposals that sought to entrench fairness at every level of justice. Grassroots movements, invigorated by Marcus's journey, amplified their calls for change. They mobilized communities, engaging in door-to-door campaigns and digital outreach programs, seeking input and fostering dialogue on how best to realize judicial reform. These gatherings cultivated a sense of collective agency, driving the message that justice is not merely an outcome but a continuous action aspired toward by each citizen. Policymakers responded to this surge of advocacy with proposals aimed at reforming the judicial landscape. Legislative initiatives focused on increasing transparency within the judicial process, implementing stricter guidelines to prevent discrimination, and enhancing support systems for those wronged by bias. Marcus's story lent a human face to these efforts, reminding lawmakers of their duty to represent all individuals impartially. In communities everywhere, dialogues were both introspective and outward-looking, challenging existing norms while envisioning futures where equity wasn't aspirational but operational. Marcus became a frequent guest at town hall meetings, where discussions dissected bias and brainstormed strategic reforms aimed at fostering inclusivity and accountability. His presence wasn't just symbolic but actively transformative, a catalyst for conversations that mattered. Within the justice system itself, reforms began taking shape, slowly but tangibly. Many jurisdictions initiated pilot programs aimed at bias training for judicial officials and law enforcement, implementing oversight committees to ensure fair practices. Courts began re-evaluating outdated protocols, incorporating technology and community feedback into processes designed to triangulate just outcomes. Throughout these movements, Marcus served as a poignant reminder of why these efforts mattered. His journey illustrated the profound impact the justice system has on individual lives, underpinning every discussion about reform. His involvement was not that of an outsider, but as an engaged participant, a custodian of stories, and a champion for those who hadn't yet been heard. For Marcus himself, this was more than a victory for justice. It was a call for sustained engagement. He joined initiatives that developed into think tanks, offering his insights to those crafting policy and community programs. Marcus spoke of hope braided with determination, a message that inspired countless others to lend their voices and actions toward a common goal. Amidst all this, lessons learned gave rise to a newfound commitment to nurturing a diverse and understanding society. People from all walks of life gathered under the banner of reform, united by a story that showed resilience in the face of adversity. Together they embarked on a path promising real, actionable change, echoing with the powerful crescendo of justice's awakening call. In every conversation sparked, in every reform inspired, Marcus's journey left its mark, proof that the pursuit of fairness, when backed by unified resolve, yields reforms reaching far beyond conventional architecture. Thus, the narrative of Marcus Delmont continued to serve as a beacon, lighting the way for genuine reform, inviting all who heard it to walk hand in hand toward a horizon defined by justice, redemption, and hope. As time moved on, the changes, spurred by Marcus Delmont's journey, began to weave into the fabric of everyday life, creating a more cohesive narrative where hope and justice intertwined seamlessly. The hopeful resolution of his story didn't just settle quietly into history. It became a catalyst that inspired ongoing actions across communities. Organizations dedicated to social justice and equity continued to proliferate, many bearing Marcus's influence in their foundational ethos. His story was more than legend. It lived on through programs aimed at offering legal support, mental health services, and advocacy training for individuals who found themselves battling systemic injustices. These initiatives created life rafts for those adrift, providing hope and practical solutions in equal measure. Despite the massive strides taken, Marcus knew the journey for justice was an ongoing expedition, and he embraced it with an energy both calm and sure. Alongside allies who shared his vision, Marcus dedicated time to mentoring youth, visiting schools, and engaging in community outreach projects. He knew the seeds of change were most potent when planted early, nurtured in environments where young minds could imagine and then create a just world. His efforts were mirrored by legislative strides that saw policy reforms take hold. New laws were passed, focusing on transparency in policing, establishing oversight councils, and mandating training for those in authority roles. These reforms sought to root out the implicit biases Marcus had encountered, creating a more equitable judicial system that served everyone impartially. In the world of academic discourse, Marcus's experience had become a seminal case study in law schools across the country. It inspired evolving dialogues within professional circles, challenging existing paradigms and pushing forward the boundaries of understanding within justice and civil rights fields. Marcus found an unexpected peace in this new chapter, where his trials had transformed into opportunities for systemic change. He was often a featured speaker at conferences, using these platforms to remind attendees that the pursuit of justice often required personal sacrifices and steadfast resolve. His message was clear. Progress was possible with collective effort and sustained action. Meanwhile, his personal life flourished amid this new equilibrium. The support of his family remained a constant source of strength. Marcus's home became a nurturing ground not just for ideas, but also for a richer life, saturated with love, laughter, and a deeply felt connection to purpose. He found time to enjoy simple pleasures, family dinners, walks in the park, witnessing his nephew's first soccer game. These moments, small yet significant, were reminders of the preciousness of time and the beauty of experiencing life unburdened by the shadows of past trials. Reflecting on the journey that had brought him here, Marcus was mindful of how individual actions could ignite movements and frame future dialogue. His advocacy wasn't just a part of his identity, it was his contribution to a world that demanded voices like his. As sunset danced across city skylines and the hum of bustling streets filled the air, Marcus knew that each heart influenced by his story was a beacon of its own, guiding a society towards compromise, compassion, and unyielding justice. He imagined a future painted with the indelible marks of courage, where justice would prevail not just occasionally, but as a natural right inherent to all. In these moments of reflection, Marcus understood the profound truth his journey had unearthed. Within every challenge lay the seed of transformation. And so, with each day rising anew, Marcus embraced the quiet certainty of purpose and the expansive possibilities that awaited, carrying forward a legacy shaped by resilience and a vision of justice yet fully realized. And the world, consisting of countless narratives sewn together by the common thread of belief in justice, collectively moved forward, each step more certain, each heart more attuned to the drumbeat of change and unity.